just a minute. All right, and I can edit this front end off before.
Good. I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, there's tools that I can do that with. But yeah, we're live now. We have no viewers. Oh, okay. And now I'm going to mute myself on my YouTube. And I think I'm our only watcher. Yeah, so when I put the link into the city, it embedded the link. And so all they have to do is open their city page.
Excellent.
And it's right there. They don't have the chat option unless they actually click on the YouTube part of the video, but they could sit right on the city and watch it if they wanted to.
And will you know if someone is attending that way?
It'll tell me a viewer number.
Okay.
Like right now, we've got 1, and that may be me.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't there a minute ago. So
I wonder, is that me by any chance?
Do you have a YouTube window open?
I've got Google Hangouts open.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think it'll record you unless you're a YouTube viewer.
Okay. And the other question is, are people seeing me, or are they simply seeing you right now?
They are seeing when you talk, they're seeing you. When I'm talk, they see me. So welcome. We've got a couple viewers on. So welcome to those watching. We're going to get started. We're going to give about 30 seconds maybe for others to join. If you're watching on the city, you can watch on YouTube, and it'll give you a chat ability if you log on YouTube. So if you're just joining us, we're going to get started in just a minute. And you can watch from the city, but if you want to click on the link on the top of that YouTube page, it'll take you to YouTube, and you need a login on YouTube, but you can chat. And if you're there and chat, just put your name in so we can see who is with us. That chat option will be the way that you can ask questions as well along the way for those of you that are watching on YouTube. All right, looks like we got a couple people on. And if I see anybody else joining us, I'll probably repeat that announcement just about how to chat via YouTube's platform. But welcome. Thanks so much for watching. Since I'm not sure who's watching, my name is Jared Sorber. I'm one of the pastors here at Bridgeway. And we're going to get started. I'm joined by June Mickens, who has been a huge help in helping to create this process that we hope will make things easier for you as a user, booking and scheduling and running events, as well as for those that set up the event on our side from the building and scheduling perspectives as well. So I'm going to share a screen. You're not going to see my face most of the time, which is probably good for you, and you'll get to see what's on our presentation. Anything you want to say, June, before I switch to the presentation? You want people to see you?
Well, just a hi to everyone who's joined us, and I hope that you find this presentation useful. And we have, in addition to the Q&A that you can do there via the chat box, we will make space at the end of the presentation for some questions and answers. So if you write them down, please know that we'll get to them by the end, if not before.
Yep, sounds good. So we've like I said, we've got a presentation that's running throughout. So I'm going to switch over to that, and you'll see that on your screen here in just a second. And we'll get started. Here we go. All right, well, thanks again for joining us. And we have created a process, like I said, that hopefully makes it easier for you to schedule events and also easy to run events and to hold the best events possible so that you have access to all the resources you need. And that's why we're meeting today, is just kind of talk you through this process. And really the purpose behind creating this process is threefold. One is event coordination, and that has to do with paying attention to what else is on Bridgeway's schedule. There's so much going on at Bridgeway week in and week out. Every single day of the week, the 3 buildings that we have are used. And so how can we better coordinate events so that events don't overlap that might interfere with each other? And even beyond that, how can we coordinate events together so they can work together? So one example of ones that are hard to have at the same time might be a men's and women's ministry, because then who's going to watch the kids? And even if you provide childcare, sometimes it's hard for both parents to be at something at the same time. And something that might be a good opportunity to coordinate events might be something like the marriage ministry. When we line that up with our middle school ministry, there's a place for the middle schoolers to go and be ministered to and have their activity, while the parents have an opportunity to grow as a married couple. And so we're looking at event coordination, things like that. We're looking at proper stewardship of resources as well as one of the purposes. How can we best use what God has given us? God has given us these facilities, and we want to maximize them, but also people that help the facilities function, tables, chairs, all the stuff that we have in here are resources that we can steward, and we want to steward those well. And so we believe this process will help with that. And it'll also create consistency. We found that depending on who you know or how long you've been at Bridgeway, you might be able to use different things for your events. We want everybody to have the best event that they can. And so we want to provide access for everybody. So it creates a consistent process for you to go through to access what you need to do your events. And you'll know what to do when it's time for an event. And we'll give you those instructions in just a minute, but it'll create quality and consistency for your event. And so those are some of our purposes. And today's agenda is really to just share the pilot with you. This is a test. It's an experiment right now. We like where we're at, but we want to use it in real life. And so we'll share this with you, and there may be some adaptations based on even your feedback along the way. And so we're going to look at that, the goal, the approach, the participants, and then the schedule for this pilot. And then we'll take questions like June said at the end. If you have questions and you're on right now, if you're watching the video on YouTube, you can, right on the right-hand side, make some comments. If you could enter your name there once you're logged into YouTube, that would be fine. If you're watching on the city, the chat option is not there, but you could maybe comment on the post below, and I can check into the city at the end and see if you have any questions. Just put those in the comments below the video on the city. And so as we were looking at this and creating this new process, we looked at what do we want a Bridgeway event to be? What sets a Bridgeway event apart? What do we want to be consistent in every Bridgeway event? Well, we want every event to be welcoming, for people to feel at home and comfortable there when they come through the doors, like it's a place that they belong. We want there to be an excellence, a quality to each event that people can count on when they go to a Bridgeway event. It's a quality event that's excellently run. We want it to be organized. We don't want there to be confusion. We don't want people to be distracted by things that would take away from the message because they're not organized or people don't know how to access what they need to attend the event, whether it's information or something at the event. Organization can just distract if it's not done, if things aren't organized well. We want to be multicultural. We want to reflect our church, our body, and the kingdom of heaven in everything that we do. And so how can you have a diverse event? Hopefully this process will help you in that as well. And then we want to be intentional. We want your event to have a purpose. It needs to fulfill whatever the purpose of your ministry specifically is, but also the broader church purpose. So if your event doesn't fit with your ministry purpose and the church purpose, then it's an event that we as a church don't want to do. We want to stay on purpose, on mission, on goal. And so understanding what the mission and the vision of your ministry is and how that works and fits underneath the church's mission and vision is very important. And it keeps us on track and helps us be intentional so that we're not just doing events for event's sake, but we're doing them for a purpose. And I'm going to hand it over to June now to continue to talk through some of these things and the approach and schedule.
Great. Thank you, Pastor Jarrett. One of the notes that we had as a challenge to meeting those 5 core standards is inadequate time to plan effectively for events. So to permit smoother planning, we developed some guidelines around the timing of event planning And that's what you see on the screen here. The goal is to begin event planning at least a year before a multi-day event. So for instance, consider the Global Leadership Summit that's coming up. That's not going to get started. The planning for that isn't going to get started today, June 1st, for an event that takes place in early August. Really, the planning for that multi-day event begins at least a year in advance. And that's what we want to encourage people to do anytime there's a multi-day event, and especially one that's using various rooms and resources within Bridgeway. For full-day events, the goal is 6 months in advance, 4 months in advance for half-day events, or for public events, or those with an expected audience of over 200. We want to be sure that you're thinking through all of the pieces that need to be done for that kind of event. 3 months for an hourly event, and as soon as possible for small meetings, and of course for funerals, because we can't plan when those are going to happen. So preferably about 2 to 4 days in advance. And we'll talk more about the timeline as it goes on. Pastor Jared, next slide, please. So in order to create and prepare for an event, a 16-step process has been developed. Now, don't get wigged out when you hear 16 steps. It really is not that detailed a process, but we wanted to be sure that we were thinking of everything along the way, or as many things as possible. So let's look at step 1. That is really to read the guide. A wonderful step-by-step guide has been prepared that sets out all of this information. The guide is going to be available to the lead group on the city and through the leaders intranet. So it will be available to you whenever you need it. So that's step 1. Step 2 is really before you get into the formal part of the process. Every ministry, when it's going to have an event, needs to think through and define that event. What is the event that you would like to have? Why are you holding the event? Remember, one of those core standards is intentionality, purposeful. And so that becomes important. Who's the intended audience? What would you like? When would you like your event to take place in terms of date and time? What's the best location? And you think about that in terms not just of the room that you like, but how many people will be attending, what kind of activities are going to take place. So for instance, we're not going to have paintball activities in the main auditorium. So we want to be sure that you're thinking about what this event really is so that you can plan and we can assist you in planning correctly. Step 3 is to clear the event and the details about what you're thinking with the ministry leader or director. So if you are in one of the sponsoring ministries, you're going to be holding an event, you want the whole concept and your preliminary thinking to be blessed by the ministry leader or the staff member who's responsible for your ministry before you enter the approval process. And then that, in doing that, you're sure that you don't get someone saying on the tail end, oh my gosh, no, we can't do that. You want to be sure that everything that you're thinking of has been given the good housekeeping seal of approval on the front end rather than the back end. Pastor Jared, step 4 is to make the request, and I will pass it back to you.
Yeah, so also provided on the city and in the lead group in the city and on the leaders intranet will be a form that I'm going to switch over to right now and just talk you through real quick. So let me switch over to that form and we'll talk through it. Form, I think a lot of it is self-explanatory. It'll ask questions that will make sense to you and don't need any further explanation. So I'll just kind of focus on the areas that need a little more explanation. So you start off, you fill in your email address, and it talks you through what this guide is for. It reminds you that we want events to be welcoming, excellent, organized, multicultural, and intentional. It also provides a link right here directly to the ACS calendar. Now, as we're going through this pilot process, we're going to slowly shift away from using ACS on the front end for you as a user to fill out your form. And you're going to fill out this instead of going on to ACS and filling it out there. But the reason we put this link here is this will take you directly to the calendar. A lot of times we get requests for dates and spaces that are already on the calendar. So one way that you can just save everybody a little time is clicking here and making sure the time, date, and space you would like is available. And so you can click there and look at that. And then you come down and continue to fill out the form. As you're filling out the form, you can click that you're requesting an event. You're not an approver, you're requesting. So you'd choose that one. I put my name in, my phone number, and the name of my ministry. And this is where you choose the ministry that you report to, or the minister that you report to. And it's a list of everyone that has people reporting to them. So it may not be your direct report. In some cases, for some ministries, it may be the person that the person you report to is. I'm going to choose myself right here, just so that I can give the approval on the back end, since we're doing a test event. You enter the name of your event. So I'm going to put the Fun House. So we're going to have an event called the Fun House. A short description. This is your public description of the event. A house. I'm just making up stuff, but this is where you fill in anything you want the public to see. This is the purpose question. So we said we want your event to be purposeful, to have an intention behind it. Here's where we want you to explain that purpose. Up above is the description. So it's not the same as that. It's not describing your event, but it's saying that our event will bring fun to the whole church. So that's the purpose I'm given for this event for now. Obviously, your purpose would probably be much more significant than that. But for the sake of our demonstration here, that's what it'll be. And then these are just your time and date questions. So you pick the date you want it. I'm going to say, and once again, we're thinking, this is probably a couple-hour event. So I'm thinking 3 months in advance. And so I'm going to just pick September 16th for now. What time would you like your event to start? And you can put your time here. And then your time to end. Also, what's not taken into account many times is the time it takes to set up an event. So oftentimes you'll look at the calendar and it'll look like it's free, but if someone has an event coming up, they may have a setup time. So it's going to take us 5 hours or 2 hours to set up for our event. And it's going to take us an hour to clean up from our event. So it's important to account for the setup and cleanup time. Our event, we want to open to the general public. There's some other options there where you could choose if you're holding a partners only meeting. That's pretty rare, but it's there and available for you if you need it. Bridgeway attendees, so people that already go to the church, or maybe your specific ministry. If you're the leader of the men's ministry and it's for men, then you choose your ministry. Or if it's the mixed ministry and you have an opportunity to just do it for your ministry, for your target audience, you'd choose that. I'm going to choose general public for this particular event. And I'm expecting 100 people. So this is a realistic expectation of how many you would like there and what your goal is. Once again, not an outrageous number that you're overshooting, but just a realistic number of how many people you think will attend. That'll help us as we look at rooms available and help you choose which rooms you may need. And then something that's new is we're offering 4 different types of room availability. And so you'll choose based on what your event fits. So if it's a no frills event, it's just a meeting. All you need is a space to meet and some chairs. You choose that. And the process for that is real quick. You choose that and you hit next and you're pretty much done. For basic, it requires a whiteboard, some audio, video, a few other things. So that would be the basic. A deluxe may require multiple rooms or a high level of energy. It'd be great for youth events. So that would include Nexus usage. And then premium events are things that require the theater or maybe the big room at Nexus when you need tech with that. It requires a lot more, or multiple buildings. That takes more coordination. So that's kind of like the big level of events. It's a pretty major event. I'm going to choose for my event a deluxe level, and we'll keep moving to the next one. And here we've got an opportunity for you to choose your room preference. So I'm going to choose the big room at Nexus. We didn't need tech for it, and so that's why I chose that premium option. And then I'm going to choose the big room. and it's not going to repeat. And so I'll choose never, and then we'll move through. And back at the event where you could choose different room levels, each one has unique questions that go along with it. So based on what level of room you choose, it'll have different questions. And like I said, if you choose no frills, you're pretty much done with the process. It'll get submitted, and if it's available, you'll get a response to that. Do you need door releases? This is where you'd fill it out here. I'm just going to check no so we can move through the questions, but you'd give us the time you needed. A lot of times we do emails back and forth of when you want stuff unlocked. Right now it's provided all for us right here, and you choose the time you want, and it's recorded for us, and we can set that for you and have it done. So I need a whiteboard and a stool, some different things that we can provide for you. I want round tables and chairs. And just because you choose it here doesn't mean it'll be all there and set up, but we need to account for how many tables and chairs we can provide for events. Sometimes there'll be multiple events going on at once, and all the chairs might not be available in one room. And so we need to account for the tables and chairs. So you let us know. If it's a large enough event, we may be able to provide some setup help, but we'll talk more to you about that and how that works in just a minute. And then this talks about registration and payment. So this is just going to be a show up event. So I'm going to say, no, there's no registration. But you know what? Yes, there is going to be a cost. We're going to charge $5 to get in. And then Google just wants you to confirm that you're not a robot going through and filling out the form. And then you submit it. So I know I went through that real fast, but like I said, a lot of those questions I feel like are self-explanatory. There's the couple there where you have to choose your room type, and that's something that you can read through, and it gives you the descriptions of the different rooms. And so that'll help you make the decision on what you need to choose. If you need to fill out another response at the end, it gives you a chance to click the form again, and it brings you right back to the beginning where you can fill out for another event. If it's a monthly event, once again, there was the opportunity in there for you to choose. This is a reoccurring event, and it reoccurs monthly. So if you have something every month of the ministry year, it would be easy for you to fill out just one form for all 9 months for that monthly repeating event. You don't need to fill out one for each. And so that's how the process works as far as filling out the form. And June's going to pick up back with the process and how that continues after you've filled out the form. So I'm going to switch back over to that and let June share a little bit more of that process.
Excellent. Thank you. So that was step 4, which was to make the request. Once you've made your request, we move on to step 5, which is that request is processed by the event and logistics team. So what are they looking for? Because this isn't just a random yes or no. They're looking to see whether the event meets the Bridgeway event standards that we talked about. Is there space available for the requested period and for the appropriate setup and cleanup times? They're looking to see if the resources that have been requested for the event are available, like the tech support or ushers and greeters or folks on first wave outside. Are there competing or complementary events for the same time frame? You know, is there already an event on the books that will pull from the same audience? Or are there events that could help one another, as Pastor Jarrett was saying, like a youth event that will keep your kids occupied while the parents are elsewhere? And then finally, if there is a price for the event, is it appropriate? Especially for events requiring additional resources, has a price been set either from the sponsoring ministry's budget or from the registration costs that will cover hosting that event? So that's step 5, and the processing that goes on behind the scenes. And step 6 actually is the decision. So a decision is going to be made and communicated, and that decision can take one of 3 forms. It will be the request is approved and that approval is communicated. The second option may be that the request is okay, but needs a little bit of adjustment before the actual approval. And then the final answer is no, maybe this event is not consistent with the Bridgeway DNA, and so it must be denied. But those are the 3 options, and whatever the decision is, it will be communicated clearly to you by the events team. Step 7, a Bridgeway event associate will be assigned to each approved event. Now, this is a new person who is entering this picture, and we'll talk a little bit about the people involved in a moment. But essentially, a point person from the events team will be assigned to assist the ministry liaison, the person who is the point person for this event, in order to move it forward. That's step 7. Step 8 is designing the event. The associate is going to communicate with the ministry liaison to confirm the facility and the resource needs and to offer their support. So the associate is there to assist the ministry in producing an event that is welcoming and excellent and organized and all of those things we talked about, and providing easy access to the needed facilities and related resources. That's the key responsibility of the associate. Please note that the associates that we're talking about are not there to design or run your programs. They're there as supports for the church, for the facilities and the technical resources you might need. That's step 8. Let's move to 9. So if you're in one of those ministries that's having an event and you meet your the event associate, the associate and the ministry liaison will arrive at a workable event plan. That is figuring out everything that you're going to need from a Bridgeway point of view in order to put this on, and arrive at a final price for the event if that is appropriate. Step 10 is that associate is going to support the ministry liaison to carry out the event plan that's been developed. We want to help you ensure that timelines are met and that resource contacts are made so that you know exactly where to go for the things you need to put on your event. Step 11, this is where the money comes in. The ministry that is sponsoring an event is going to work with finance, if appropriate, to make sure that purchase orders are issued for the event, that registration is running smoothly through the systems and processes that work here at the church. And the goal is for purchase orders to be out 30 days before an event, if it's a multi-day or full-day event, and 14 days in advance for the hourly events. The goal is to ensure that vendors are being paid on time. And again, we want to be able to guard the church's reputation in the community and the payment of people who depend on us for continued growth. Step 12 is that the associate and the ministry liaison will do a walkthrough or a talk through 1 week before the event. Now, this really is for those big events, but we want to ensure that last minute I's are dotted and T's are crossed so that the ministry is set up for a smooth event execution. Step 13 is to have your event. The plan goes into action, setup occurs, the event runs, the cleanup plan is implemented, and people truly enjoy being on our campus with us. Step 14 is a new one, which is evaluation. Evaluation is an important component so that we can determine how the process is running, where additional support and or training is needed for the event associates, for sponsoring ministries, for our resource liaisons. And we also want to know where additional resource investments may be required in order to carry out the volume and types of events to be hosted in Bridgeway facilities. So evaluation becomes key for us. Step 15 is that the ministry is working with the finance office to pay invoices and to close out the event. And then our final step in this process, 16, is that the events and logistics pastor, the associates, Bridgeway related resources are going to come together and debrief periodically about the events that we're having so that we can continue improving and planning effectively for the future. So that's the process in a nutshell. Let's take just a moment to talk through the people who are involved here. You've heard me mention them at a few points in the process. Let me identify them for you in a more consistent way. So every in-house event is going to come through a Bridgeway ministry, and the ministry leader will need to be involved, or that staff member that you saw Pastor Jarrett talk about as we looked at the form. That person is involved in initiating or at a minimum approving the event concept. The ministry also should designate one person as the ministry event liaison. Essentially, this is the point person from the ministry for this particular event. While others in the ministry may and likely will be involved in producing any event, we want one person to serve as the point of contact for the Bridgeway event team. Note that we've been talking a lot about ministry events. We also know that outside groups use our facilities as well, and we'll be asking those organizations to designate an organization liaison to serve as our point of contact for them as well. You see on the screen that there also is an event pastor, and that person is carrying quite a weight on his shoulders. So Pastor Jarrett is our events pastor, and he ultimately is responsible for the entire process. He oversees the process, the selection and work of those carrying it out. If you'll go back one, Pastor Jarrett, he's responsible for the high-level approval of events and resource utilization, for contract negotiations when that's appropriate, and for the ongoing evaluation of the process, execution, and results. So it's a big job, but he has taken this one on. Okay, let's now look at the event scheduler. This is the person, when an event request comes in through the system, who goes into the booking system to look at the church-wide calendar to see if the proposed event date, time, and location work in light of all else that's happening in the life of the church. And you know that's a lot these days. Okay, let's look at the next one. The events coordinator is akin to a charge nurse in a hospital setting. So when an event is approved, this person now comes into play and matches the event to the right event associate. The coordinator trains and supports the work of the associates, meets with them periodically to build into them, to understand the needs and trends that we're seeing, to coordinate with resources to ensure that we've got overall availability, and to understand the requirements of our Bridgeway resources, and to lobby for process and or resource changes in light of the circumstances that we're seeing on an individual basis, or on a continuing basis as we're planning events. The next person in this process is the events associate, and that's the name you've heard repeated as we've talked this through. The associate really is the hub of the whole process. This person, again, doesn't plan the event for the ministry, but the associate is the ministry's liaison, or the outside organization's liaison for Bridgeway. So instead of that person from that sponsoring ministry or that outside organization trying to figure out who does what around here, that person only needs to work with and through the event associate. They'll put together that event plan and secure the space and the facility-related resources needed to host a successful event. And of course, if we go to the final slide, we've got a host of Bridgeway administrative, facility, technical, and other team members whose skills are needed in order to plan and carry out any event that takes place on our campus. So now, Pastor Jarrett, I pass it back to you.
All right, so we are getting ready to test this, and today is June 1st, and so for the next month and a half, we're going to give you an opportunity to test this system. Now tomorrow we're doing another training. It's this exact same one again, and then we're going to be sharing this video. So tomorrow when that training's done, we'll be putting out that information guide that June had mentioned earlier, and that link that I had talked about that will take you to the form, and we'll let you put in your events. If you've already put in an event to the system and it hasn't been approved through ACS, we'd love for you to go back and fill out this form. The more times we get to use it and see how the whole process is working, the better we'll be coming at doing it, and we'll find out what's right, what's wrong, what needs to be adjusted in it. So that's really this test period. And so we're doing these webinars now, and we're getting ready to meet with our event associates for the second time on June 11th to continue their training so that they're ready to work with you and help provide what you need. Once again, they're there to give you access to things, not to run the event for you, but they'll be a huge help, I think, to you, and look forward to having them working alongside of you. And we'll debrief mid-July once we've run this test and make any changes, and then we'll roll out at the beginning of August as we get ready for the ministry year new events. But like we said, I think one thing that would help you right now is just start thinking ahead. Some of you are great and you lay out plans far ahead, but if you can get thinking ahead now, it'll make it much easier shift into this process to plan ahead. So that's the schedule of the upcoming pilot.
So that actually is a great segue into next steps. And Pastor Jared is right when he says, think about what it is that you've got on your calendar. Look at your summer events calendar. Anything that is happening over the summer should go through this process. So take a few minutes now so that the events team can help you plan your event. A next step is to select the ministry liaison for each summer event you're having. This, again, is the point person for your ministry for that particular event. But if you're not one of those sponsoring ministries, let's go to the next slide. If you are instead one of the ministries that is a resource here at the church, like CAM or facilities, you want to select a person who will serve as the point person for your group, the person that associates can touch base with as a first place of attack, or the person to whom they can send ministry liaisons regarding any upcoming event. And then the final thing that we ask you to do is to read the guide. That will help you to move forward with the events that you're having this summer. And so that takes us to Q&A.
All right, we've got some opportunity for questions and answers. If you're watching on the city, you can go ahead and ask questions right at the bottom as you respond to the topic. I see that Shanda's on. She has a question I will get to in just a second. Those of you watching on YouTube, you can go to the chat feature on the right-hand side of your page and just comment there. You do have to be logged in to YouTube to access that. Events, there's a question about events that do not require space to be reserved at Bridgeway, that require registration and payment system. There was not a drop-down menu for this. Will there be another system for that type of event? No, the same system will work. There's an other button on that list, and you can click that and just let us know that you're off-site. And the main reason for that is there will be some involvement with the payment system and the registration system, like you mentioned, both of those on there. And then also we like to look at what other events are going on. Even if they're not going on site, does it conflict or does it work well with other events that are going on the church? So yeah, there will be an opportunity for you to do that. It's not a separate system. It's the same system, just a different choice a little bit further down in that drop-down menu. Are there any other questions that anybody has either on YouTube or in the comments on the city? You can go ahead. We'll give you just a few seconds to ask any other questions. Looks like we got several people online. All right, I don't see anybody else typing or any other questions. Any other thoughts, June, before we wrap it up?
I just want to follow on with Shanda's question. Mm-hmm. Having that event on the calendar becomes really important, even if it's not happening at a Bridgeway facility, because then we have a good opportunity to know what's going on in the life of the church, the people who may be pulled for one event or another, or even as another group is planning its events, but people may have spent money to go to one of yours. We may say, ooh, this next event needs to be pushed back a little bit because it's drawing from the same group of people and perhaps limited resources. So it becomes important to get them on the calendar, whether they're happening on site or not.
Absolutely. All right, well, it doesn't look like there's any other questions that have come in or are in the process of coming in. So thank you all so much for taking time out of your day to watch this. This video will be available later. Once again, we're shooting another one of these tomorrow. So if you want to join live again, you're welcome to. But if not, you can catch this video again on replay if you need to get the information again. And I'll make the post of both the link and the event guide tomorrow after that training. So thank you so much for watching, and we're excited to get this new process going, and thank you for embracing it and joining in. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot.